Okay, so I want to start with a scenario today. It's going to sound mundane, almost boring, honestly, but bear with me because it might just break physics. Imagine you're a CEO. You're sitting in your corner office on the top floor, let's say the 10th floor. Down on the factory floor, a machine breaks. Boom. It happens at exactly 9 a.m.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Chaos on the ground floor.
Right. But you are the CEO. You don't see it happen with your own eyes. The floor manager has to write a report. He hands it to a courier. The courier takes the elevator up. By the time that report lands on your desk and you read machine broken, it's, say, 9:15 a.m.
Right, just standard corporate life,
Yeah.
the bureaucracy of distance, basically.
Exactly. But here's the question that, according to the massive stack of documents we're diving into today, might just unravel 100 years of relativity. Did that event happen at 9 or did it happen at 9:15? And more importantly, does the math we use to describe the universe simply delete that 15-minute delay because it's just too messy to calculate?
It sounds like a philosophical question or maybe a weird management seminar, but today we are looking at a source that argues this is actually a geometry problem, a massive one.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really provocative and, pretty aggressive series of blog posts. We're looking at the work of an author known as Zionad 2023, specifically a series titled Mr. Einstein's Sabotage.
Sabotage. I mean, it is a very strong word to throw at the most famous physicist in history.
It is. We are focusing on entries 104, 103, and some backstory from their archives. And the premise is bold. The giants of physics, Einstein, Poincaré, Lorentz, didn't just make a mistake with special relativity. The author claims they slacked off. They skipped the hard work of spatial recognition and just settled for easy algebra.
And our mission for this deep dive is to take this apart. We're going to explore a theory that replaces abstract equations with 3D modeling, literally using software called Blender, to argue that we have completely misunderstood what an observer actually is.
Right, and at the center of this theory is a character that honestly sounds like it was ripped out of an anime, the Train King.
Resha'o, the Train King.
So let's get into it. This isn't just some guy in a conductor's hat driving a steam engine. Who or what is the Train King?
So to understand the Train King, you really have to understand the core problem the author has with standard physics. Usually when you open a textbook and look at a diagram of an observer in a reference frame, what do you see?
Usually a dot. Just a point on a graph right at the origin. Coordinate X, Y, Z.
Exactly, a zero-dimensional point. The author argues this is physically impossible. You can't observe anything if you were just a dot. You need a retina, a brain, a processing system. You need structure. So Zionad 2023 constructs an observer that is actually an organization.
Like a corporate hierarchy.
A literal hierarchy, yeah. Imagine a circle with a radius of 10 meters. This is the floor of the observation deck. At the very center of the floor, you have a middle manager, the bucho, or department manager.
Okay, so middle management is right at 0, 0, 0. Where is the king?
The Train King, the ultimate observer, the CEO, isn't on the floor. The king is hovering directly above the manager at a height of 10 meters. Position Z equals 10.
Okay, so we have a cone shape, basically. Manager at the bottom center, king floating at the top. But who's doing the actual work? Who actually sees the stuff happening outside?
The employees. There are 360 of them, standing all along the edge of that 10-meter circle. They act as the sensors or the mirrors. The source calls them employee-kun.
Employee-kun. I love that. So 360 employees, one manager, one king. Why go to all the trouble of building this elaborate setup just to measure time?
To prove that now is complicated. Let's say an event happens right at the edge of the circle. One of the employees sees a flash of light. Let's call that time 0.
Okay. Flash happens, employee-kun sees it.
In standard physics, we often just hand-wave the time it takes for that information to be recorded. We act as if the coordinate system instantly knows the flash happened because it's inside the system. But in this Train King model, the employee actually has to transmit that report.
Via light or radio?
Yes, at the speed of light. So the signal travels 10 meters from the rim to the center manager. Then it travels 10 meters straight up to the king. It's a triangle.
High school geometry, a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Precisely. And because of that physical distance, the report doesn't arrive instantly. The source calculates that if the event is at time 0, the king doesn't receive the file until time equals 14.1.
14.1. Okay, so there is a lag. The king is basically living in the past.
We all are. That's the entire point. The author's accusation, sabotage part, is that Einstein and his peers treated the occurrence of the event and the reception of the information as the exact same thing. Or at least They collapse the observer into a single point where that internal delay is completely ignored.
It's like the accounting department, which I guess represents the physicists here, just looks at the ledger and says, the sale happened today. But the Train King says, no, I'm reading a report about a sale that happened 14 seconds ago.
That distinction is everything to this author. He calls it the difference between the map and the territory. The map just says T. The territory, the actual geometry, says, wait, light had to travel from the sensor to the processor? If you ignore that delay, you start inventing things like time dilation to explain why the numbers don't match up when really it's just bureaucratic lag.
That's a massive claim. It implies that things like length contraction, the idea that a train physically shrinks when it moves fast, might just be an optical illusion caused by this reporting delay.
That is exactly the argument. The author suggests that because physicists rarely model the internal structure of the measuring device, they mistake a delay in data processing for a literal warping of reality.
I want to talk about how he proves this, because he doesn't use the usual tools. He uses something called a box garden.
Yes, the box garden.
It sounds delightful, but I assume we aren't planting petunias here.
No, definitely not. It's a mental sandbox, or specifically a 3D simulation space. The author really hates abstract algebra. He frames it as algebraic efficiency versus geometric reality. He wants visual verification.
So he builds a world. What's actually in this garden?
Lighthouses. 2 massive electromagnetic lighthouses. This is where the theory shifts from the internal workings of the Train King to the external world.
Paint the picture for us.
Imagine a massive grid. You have a red lighthouse positioned way over at x equals -100, and a blue lighthouse at x equals 100.
And these aren't just for looks. They are emitting signals.
Constantly. And this is crucial. The source compares them to GPS satellites.
Yeah.
Think about how your phone knows where it is right now. Did your phone feel the road?
No, it just listens.
It listens. It picks up a timestamp from satellite A and a timestamp from satellite B. It compares them. Signal A took this long, signal B took that long. Triangulation.
So the author is saying the Train King, our complex observer, is navigating by using these lighthouses.
Yes. He argues that these signals create a fixed grid, or a sea of information. And this is a direct attack on the core relativistic idea that all motion is relative.
Right, because the classic Einstein example is, if I'm on a train with blacked out windows, I can't tell if I'm moving or if the station is moving past me. That's the cornerstone of relativity.
And Zainad 2023 says, open the window and look at the lighthouses. He argues that the electromagnetic field is absolute. The signals are coming from fixed points in space. Even if your train is moving at 80% the speed of light, if you do the geometry of those incoming signals properly, accounting for the internal delay we talked about, you can mathematically prove you are the one moving.
So he's basically trying to bring back an absolute frame of reference.
In a way, yes. He's saying the physics industry ignores this absolute environment because they don't model the physical travel of the light from the lighthouse to the specific sensor employees on the rim of the observer. They just average it all out with simple equations.
You mentioned the physics industry. I have to say, looking through these sources, the tone of these blog posts is pretty spicy.
It's incredibly combative. He views the entire history of physics as a battle between 2 types of people, accountants and fighter pilots.
I love this analogy. Break it down for us.
So in the author's eyes, physicists like Lorentz, Einstein, and Poincaré are the accountants. They look at the ledger. They deal purely in symbols T, X, V. Their only goal is to make the equation balance, A plus B equals C. If the math works, the theory is assumed true.
They care about the numbers matching up on paper, not necessarily the physical reality underneath.
Right. But the fighter pilot.
The fighter pilot creates a much messier picture.
Because a fighter pilot cannot fly by looking at a spreadsheet. A pilot needs spatial recognition capability. They need a visceral 3D mental map of the sky. Where am I? Where's the enemy? Where's the ground?
And specifically, they need to understand deflection shooting.
Right. Leading the target. If you shoot at where the enemy plane is right now, you are going to miss. You have to shoot it where it will be when the bullet gets there. You have to actively account for the travel time of the bullet.
And the author thinks Einstein missed this entirely.
He claims Einstein and others completely fail to account for the deflection of information. He calls it a simple trick or a childish oversight. He says that because they didn't draw the design drawings, literally the geometric specifications of how light hits the sensor, they misinterpreted the famous Michelson-Morley experiment for 100 years.
Can we pause there for a second? For you listening who maybe hasn't thought about Michelson-Morley since Physics 101, wait, what is that experiment again?
Sure. It was the crucial experiment in the late 1800s designed to detect the ether, the invisible substance light was supposed to travel through. They shot light beams in different directions using mirrors. They expected that if the Earth was moving through the ether, one beam would be slower than the other because of the drag.
But they found nothing. The beams arrived at the exact same time.
Correct. The famous null result. This is what led Einstein to say, there is no ether. The speed of light is constant for everyone, regardless of your motion.
But our Train King author disagrees with that conclusion.
Vehemently. He argues that they didn't find the ether because they didn't understand the organization of their own machine. They treated the interferometer as a single perfect point. He claims if you model the Train King's view, including that 14.1 delay between the mirror and the observer, the null result actually proves the existence of the grid, not the absence of it.
That is wild. He's basically saying 100 years of physics is based on a bad diagram.
A bad diagram and a stubborn refusal to use the right tools. Which brings us to why he uses Blender.
Yeah, usually when we look at physics papers on this deep dive, it's Python scripts or MATLAB. This guy's using 3D animation software. Why?
Because of the blind spots of language and algebra. The source argues that you can write a sentence or an equation that describes something physically impossible, and the grammar or the math will still be absolutely perfect.
Like saying the square circle, grammatically fine, logically impossible.
Exactly. But in Blender, you can't cheat. If you try to place a rigid cylinder on a track, and the geometry doesn't physically work, the distinct pieces will clip through each other. You see the collision right there on the screen. He calls this visual verification.
He's treating physics like a collision detection engine in a video game.
That's a really great way to put it. And the key visual he produces with this is the inverse cone.
The cone. How is this different from the light cone we always hear about in Stephen Hawking books?
In standard relativity, the past light cone is abstract. It's a graph showing causality. But Zionad 2023 builds a physical geometric shape. Remember, our Train King is Z equals 10.
Hovering right above the manager.
Right. He is collecting data from that circle of employees down below. The path that the light takes from the employees up to the king creates a literal physical cone shape.
Okay, I can visualize that, like a teepee made of light beams.
Now imagine the whole structure moving. The train starts rolling forward. The shape of that information flow. The actual path the light has to take to catch up to the moving king distorts.
So it tilts.
It warps.
Yeah.
And the author claims standard diagrams completely flatten this out. They ignore the volume of the cone. He argues that now that the king sees is actually a composite collection of pasts arranged in a very specific, distorted cone shape.
So now isn't just a slice of time, it's a composite image of different delayed reports.
Precisely. And if you don't account for that specific 3D shape, you assume things are happening at the same time when they absolutely aren't. You get simultaneity completely wrong.
This feels like a return to a very mechanical view of the universe. It's almost Victorian, but with better graphics cards.
It really is. It rejects the mysticism of relativity. He's saying, the train didn't magically shrink. Your report on the train took longer to get to the boss, so it just looks like it shrank from your perspective.
Which brings us back to that core philosophy we touched on. The map is not the territory.
Alfred Krasivsky. The source quotes him directly. It's the warning that we shouldn't confuse the symbol T in an equation for the physical reality of a photon hitting a sensor.
It's a lot to process. Taking something as settled as special relativity and just saying, wait, look at the geometry again. But even if this theory is completely wrong, and we should emphasize, it contradicts the standard model heavily and physicists would tear it apart, the methodology is fascinating.
I agree. The idea that we need to define the observer not as a ghost, but as a complex system with dimensions and delays, that really sticks with you.
An observer is a corporation, and corporations always have latency.
Always.
So what's the real takeaway here? For you, the listener, driving to work or maybe sitting on a train right now, why should you care about the Train King?
I think the real application is about critical thinking regarding our own perception. We tend to think that what we see now is happening right now, but technically, physically, we are all the Train King.
We're all just waiting for the report.
We are. Light takes time to reach your retina. The electrical signal takes time to travel up your optic nerve to your brain. Your brain takes milliseconds to process that into a coherent image. You are never actually seeing the present. You are always living in the past.
So we are all sitting in that office at Z equals 10, reading yesterday's news and calling it today.
And the danger comes when we forget that delay exists, when we act as if our perception is instantaneous and absolute. That is when we make mistakes, whether that's in physics, in business, or in relationships. We need to account for the processing time.
Mr. Einstein's Sabotage. It's a provocative title, but it forces you to look at a lighthouse or a GPS satellite a little differently. It's not just a magic beacon, it's part of a rigid, absolute grid that we're all swimming through.
And maybe, just maybe, we should trust the fighter pilot inside us, the one who visualizes the physical space, more than the accountant who just wants the numbers to balance.
That's a great place to leave it. We've gone from corporate middle managers to 3D blender models to the absolute speed of light.
A true deep dive.
Absolutely. So here is a thought to leave you with. If the Train King is right, and every observer is actually an organization with internal delays, who is the department manager in your head? And are they giving you the full raw data? Or are they just summarizing the report to make it look like everything is happening all at once?
That is a deeply disturbing thought.
Check your internal memos, everyone. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you on the next one.